Welcome to Talk to Satv, where we dive into the deep discussions of most pressing global and national issues. Today, in Talk to Satv, sponsored by Grand Palace Hotel and Resorts, guest is Country Director of ILO, Mr. Max Tunon. Well, he's assumed his duty on August 2025, and after he assumed his duty, he comes with a vast experience and knowledge regarding the skill, decent working environment, labor right, safe investment, and definitely he has close connection throughout his working with the government of Bangladesh, the industry, and the labor communities as well. So he holds a very pivotal position because Bangladesh is expecting to reshape its labor policy so that a sustainable and economic development could be achieved through a better working environment where rights will be ensured. Mr. Max Tunon, welcome to Talk to Satv, sponsored by Grand Palace Hotel and Resort. My first question to you, well, to start us off, could you briefly explain the ILO's or International Labour Organization's mandate and its role globally for our viewers?
Thank you very much for having me. So, put simply, the role of the ILO is to promote decent work, that is, more jobs and better jobs. The ILO is a specialized agency of the United Nations. That means we are a member of the UN, but we have a particular governance structure. We are a tripartite organization, meaning our membership and our decision making is not made just by governments, but also by workers and employers' organizations. Our agenda, our decent work agenda, can be broadly categorized into four key buckets. One is around labor rights, promoting labor law, labor legislation and policies in line with international labor standards. Two, around employment creation, making sure that more women and men have access to jobs. Thirdly, around social protection. So for those people who cannot access jobs, whether that's because of injury at work, whether that's because of old age and moving into pensions, whether that's because of employment injuries or for any other reason, making sure that there are social protection mechanisms that cover more and more workers. And fourthly, the area of social dialogue, and that's really the bedrock of the ILO, dialogue between workers, employers, and the government.
What about the child labor? Because that's a major concern over here. I don't think that's a problem on the, well, that's pretty much different from the other parts of the world. And what are your achievements, do you think, in 2025? And what are your goals for 2026 for, as a country director of International Labour Organization in Bangladesh?
Well, the challenges and the priorities of the ILO Bangladesh office are many and vast.
Exactly.
But if I had to broadly put it into three areas, I would say firstly on jobs. We know that this is a critical issue in Bangladesh. 2 million people entering the labor market each year, and a vast number of those entering to jobs in the informal economy. So creating decent jobs is a top priority. We have a huge program looking at skills development, looking at formalization, looking at how we can build sectors that can absorb more jobs. A second priority is around labor administration and working conditions, working with the government as well as social partners to strengthen those institutions, including around wage setting, including labor inspection, social dialogue, and around industrial relations. All of those institutions exist but need further strengthening. We also work on labor law in that regard as well. And thirdly, we have a dedicated program in the RMG sector. For 10 years, we've been working closely with the RMG sector in 500 factories covering 1.4 million workers, looking at how we can gradually improve conditions there. So in broad terms, these are some of the key priorities of the ILO in Bangladesh. But as I said, we are tackling many issues, including, as you mentioned, the issue of child labor, forced labor, issues related to international labor migration, etc.
Well, according to you, what does the ILO see as the most effective path forward creating for the decent work condition in Bangladesh? Because creating a decent work condition is pivotal in terms of implementing the labor rights. You have mentioned about the labor law. We have the labor code, and it has the mechanism, but is it implementing effectively or not? So, so what is your take on that?
So in terms of our agenda around jobs, for example, I mean, there's many ways of looking at this, but maybe I'll focus on a couple. One is around policy. I think for too long we've looked at jobs becoming a natural byproduct of economic growth. But the evidence shows that over the past 10 years or so, growth has not led to jobs. We've got jobless growth in the country. And it's not unique to Bangladesh. This is a trend that we're seeing in many places around the world. So it's really important that jobs are central to thinking when we're developing macroeconomic policy, that jobs are the forefront of people's minds. And not just looking at this as the responsibility or the mandate of one ministry, the Ministry of Labour and Employment, but rather looking at interministerial coordination, looking at how we can tie up issues of industrial policy, sectoral policy, commerce and investment, with active labour market policies, looking at skills, looking at enterprise development, employment services that match workers with employers. So all of these have to come together in a broader strategy. That's one thing that we're looking at prioritizing. If we delve down into one of the specific issues, certainly skills is an area of great concern. We've been working on this issue for many years in Bangladesh, primarily from the supply side, looking at how we can strengthen TVET, technical and vocational training institutions, and the quality of training within those. What we're seeing more and more is that there is a skills mismatch. Those people who are graduating from TVET institutions, or indeed graduating from schools and the university system, are not meeting the needs of employers. Employers time and again tell us that they're not meeting their needs both in terms of the technical skills, but also in terms of the soft skills, the transferable skills. So there's a need to strengthen education and training in a number of ways. One is around governance. In Bangladesh, there are 20 or so institutions, ministries and entities that are dealing with skills development. How do we ensure that they are all working towards the same goals, operationalizing all the Bangladesh National Qualifications Framework? How do we ensure that we have quality assessment mechanisms in place that are built on data, built and based on quality data? Looking at labor market information, what are the jobs that exist out there, but also matching that up with skills needs anticipation. Where is the potential for growth? So a huge amount of work to do in terms of the governance of the education and skills sector. At the same time, there's a big investment needed around quality, the quality of the curriculum, making sure that it's modernized according to the competencies needed by the labor market, but also investment in the quality of teaching and trainers. And thirdly, I would say, is the issue of inclusion. We have to make sure that these training opportunities are not excluding, let's say, women, people with disabilities, or any other groups. Rather, it's important that all of these have access to training and development opportunities.
So how do you align with the government? Because you mentioned about the vocational training and the schools that governments have set up. And you have reiterated about the modernization of the syllabus or the skills, and so that they could match the 21st century industry need. So how do you align with the government, and how do you reciprocate with them?
We work day in, day out with the government, with different departments responsible for skills training, with the TMED and the Ministry of Education, with the Ministry of Youth, with the National Skills Development Authority and others on skills development specifically. But we work with many other government institutions as well as with the employers and workers. And we work, as I said, at various levels. One is on the policy side, one is on strengthening the institutional mechanisms, the qualifications framework, implementation plans. But also, very importantly, we have connections with training on the ground. Around Bangladesh, in 10 different districts around Bangladesh, we are working with TVET institutions to make sure that the quality of training is improved, that it's inclusive, and is meeting the needs of the private sector.
You talked about the raising awareness, social interaction at the first of the show. Because so what about women's working condition over here, and what about the social awareness about it? And so what's your take on women working condition over here, especially in the labor market or in the workforce?
Yeah, I think we can tell the story with a few different statistics. One is the female labor force participation rate is quite low. It's in the low 40s. We see a huge number of women who are working in the informal economy. So 85% of the overall labor market is in the informal economy. For women, it's higher. It's 95, 96%. We see even for female graduates of universities, they have much higher unemployment rate than their male counterparts. Around 1/3 of women who've graduated from universities are unemployed. And very few women are in leadership managerial positions. So that really tells the picture. Across the board, we see that women face challenges, structural and systemic and social challenges and barriers towards entering and staying in the labor market. This includes discrimination in the workforce and in terms of accessing jobs and career progression. It includes issues related to violence and harassment at work, making sure what kind of environment is making sure it's safe for women. But also it includes the training, the skills and training and development opportunities that women have access to. I think one of the issues that we really want to pay more attention to and advocate more with the government is around care. We know that this is a major barrier because women have additional care responsibilities, whether that's for children or elderly care. And there is really a need, we've heard it from many different corners, that there is a need for improving the quality of care and access to quality care in Bangladesh. We're pleased to see that this is an emerging priority of the government, and we have models from the private sector, from the government, from communities of how care can be delivered in a quality way. We have national minimum standards for quality care that we want to see replicated throughout the country, and this will really make a big difference to women who want to enter and stay in the labor market.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, now it's time to go on a break on Talk to SATV, sponsored by Grand Palace Hotel and Resort. Please do come back after the break because we will talk a lot more important issues with Max Tunon. Welcome to Talk to SATV, sponsored by Grand Palace Hotel and Resort. Before the break, we are discussing with Mr. Max Tunon that what are the key issues that we should address. Especially he reiterated and he gave importance that social interaction is very important in terms of establishing decent working condition as well as skill development. Well, my question to you, Mr. Tunon, Bangladesh relies significantly on overseas employment. So how do you view this dependence and what are the opportunities and risks? Because millions of workers, they work overseas and Bangladesh economy is highly dependent on them.
So what we always say is that migration should be a choice rather than a necessity. But we recognize that at the moment there are not enough jobs at home for Bangladeshis. And we recognize that also migration is a lifeline for many workers and their families and important to the economy of Bangladesh through remittances and foreign currency. So for us, we fully understand why there is a huge attention and investment around labor migration. For us, it's critical to make sure that there is a safe migration at each stage of the migration cycle, before departure, in the country of destination, and upon return. What kind of support can be provided to migrant workers to make sure that they capitalize on the benefits of migration and can avoid some of the pitfalls, the inherent risks as well. So one of the things that we've really paid a lot more attention to and really need to tackle together with the government and with workers and other actors is the issue of high recruitment fees. Bangladesh stands out among neighboring countries and indeed among all countries of origin in the world as having very, very high recruitment fees. And this is hard to explain. There is no justifiable reason as to why a Bangladeshi worker should pay double or even triple what a counterpart from India or from Nepal or any other country is paying to migrate into the same job in the same country of destination. So this is really what requires a lot more focus, making sure that recruitment agencies are more tightly regulated, that there is better monitoring mechanisms in place, and those who are not able to comply with the rules and with the laws of Bangladesh, they have their licenses removed and are closed down. There needs to be a space for ethical recruitment agencies to emerge and to compete, and that way I truly believe that that will enable Bangladesh to get a greater share of employment opportunities internationally. In addition to the fair recruitment question, there is also the issue of skills, investing in skilled migration. At the moment, a large concentration of Bangladeshi's overseas migrant population is going into the lower wage jobs, but there is huge potential in terms of upskilling, semi-skilled and high-skilled work for them to capitalize on opportunities that exist for higher income, higher skilled jobs. That's important not only in terms of income and remittances, but also in terms of protection. Those workers who have more skills have better bargaining power with their employers. They have better protections as well. So that's a big part of our efforts is to work on skilling migrant workers and making sure that the skills that they gain here in Bangladesh are recognized in countries of destination.
Bangladesh Labour Act now is adopted by the Parliament on 9th April. So what is your take on that law? especially in terms of implementing labor rights and the mechanism that Bangladesh right now has?
We very much welcome the new Bangladesh Labour Act that was adopted earlier this month. It contains a number of provisions which will certainly enhance protections for millions of workers across Bangladesh. And very importantly, these align with a number of fundamental principles and rights at work. First and foremost is the issue of freedom of association. The new law lowers the threshold for establishing trade unions and also makes it easier for trade unions to be registered. And freedom of association and working with trade unions is really an enabling factor for the protection of workers' rights. So this is really a critical aspect of the new law. But beyond that, there are additional provisions around occupational safety and health, around non-discrimination, around violence at work, which for the first time protect workers also in line with what's in the international labor standards. On top of these provisions, there is also the law also establishes a number of new institutions. These include around alternative dispute resolution. And this will accelerate the process through which workers can access justice, because there's a huge backlog in the labor courts. And by having alternative means through conciliation and arbitration, workers will be able to resolve their cases in a more timely manner. In addition to that, the law establishes a new system for employment injury insurance, which is critical, making sure that workers who suffer injuries or family members who lose their family members to accidents at work are properly compensated, again, in line with international labor standards. So there's a lot within the law that is incredibly positive, and now our focus is on ensuring that we can effectively implement and enforce it.
Ladies and gentlemen, enforcement of labor law is often highlighted as a major challenge. Where do you see the key institutional gaps, particularly in subcontract and in informal economy?
So in response to this, I would say that there's a number of institutions that need to be strengthened to ensure effective application and enforcement of the law. I think firstly, we talk about the role of the Labour Inspectorate. In Bangladesh, it's largely left to DAIFI in the Ministry of Labour. And here we know that DAIFI, or the Labour Inspectorate, is not able to monitor all the workplaces across the country. So it's really important that they are strategic in identifying which of the sectors where there are more likely to be hazards or abuses of the labour law. Perhaps also in terms of geographical focus, really targeting limited resources to where they can make the most impact. So this is something that we're doing closely with the Labour Inspectorate. We're also looking at how we can enhance the digitalization of the system to make sure that monitoring of working conditions and working environments is more transparent, and we're able to identify gaps and to take follow-up action accordingly. The other aspect of this relates to dispute resolution, making sure that there are mechanisms through which workers can raise complaints and grievances. And here we see a challenge, especially because workers may be intimidated or reluctant to lodge complaints, especially if they feel there'll be a retaliation from employers, or the process towards accessing justice and seeing the complaint resolved could be lengthy. So therefore, these are institutions that we're very much looking at how we can enhance in collaboration with the government. But I would also say there are other institutions that play a key role here, particularly trade unions. We really feel that they can play an active role in facilitating workers' responding to grievances at the individual level or collective level within enterprises, or raising issues with the government to help them access justice and resolve their grievances.
Well, we have come from a long way after the Rana Plaza incident. Do you think that there are some changes in terms of working environment, in terms of protection of workers' right? So what do you think, that the transition has really happened?
I mean, overall, I would say that the RMG sector that existed 10 or 15 years ago is very different from the one that exists today. We've seen major strides forward when it comes to occupational safety and health, wage payments, employment contracts in the sector. But for sure, there are still some gaps. And I would say that, within Bangladesh, the industry is so huge that you will see challenges across the spectrum. Some factories are world-leading, the world's best, the highest quality of standards, and then we have issues at the other end of the spectrum as well. Especially when we're talking about non-export-oriented industry, we would see more challenges there. When it comes to persistent challenges around non-compliance within the sector, two things really come to mind. One is the issue of freedom of association. What kind of environment exists for trade unions to engage with management in a cooperative and a constructive manner? That's an area where we still see a degree of pushback from parts of industry, and we're working to address those. The other issue relates to gender-based violence and making sure that women are working in safe working environments. We have a number of programs through our Better Work Bangladesh program to promote better conditions of work, but also more safe working environments for women in the factories. We've got programs that look at training workers to take on more supervisory roles, which has had an impact on their wages as well as on the productivity of the line. So that's showing very, very concrete results. But we're also looking at other measures, including anti-harassment committees in factories to make sure that women work in a safe environment. So overall, a lot of change in the industry, and we hope that the lessons from the RMG sector can also be applied to other sectors, growing sectors in Bangladesh, because I really believe there is a wealth of knowledge and experience that can be passed on.
Well, there are a lot of discussions that's been going on for Bangladesh's upgradation to the LDC and the impact that would have on its export markets. So according to you, what do you think that the impact of graduation on the labor market?
It's expected that without a smooth transition, the LDC graduation would be a bumpy ride, especially for the RMG sector, which has a number of preferential agreements with its key markets overseas, particularly with the EU. The ILO can support in this regard. We know that Bangladesh is signing a number of new trade agreements. It recently signed agreements with the US and with Japan, which had dedicated labor chapters within those trade agreements. And those trade agreements refer to the ILO's fundamental principles and rights at work, the ones that we've been talking about around freedom of association, forced labor, child labor, non-discrimination, safety and health at work, etc. So we feel that as Bangladesh negotiates these new trade agreements, there is a role for the ILO in terms of making sure that those standards are maintained within that. Secondly, when it comes to diversifying the economy, there is a need to move on from the heavy reliance on just the RMG sector and look at what other sectors of the economy can grow, including in global supply chains. So we're working with a number of partners in the country to see how we can expand opportunities and markets for leather, for aquaculture, and for plastics. And thirdly, on the issue of productivity, another element of the smooth transition strategy. As we were talking about before, the ILO has been working closely with the government and partners on skills development for a long time, and this is a key priority for us going forward, making sure that the next generation of Bangladeshi workers is indeed more productive and able to cope with and be more competitive globally.
Mr. Max Tunon, you have been here while you were a kid, and you have gone through the different parts as well of the city, and I don't know whether you've gone through the different parts of the country. You've seen and you've observed the situation of the laborers. You must have observed. So you've come back later on. In this part, you came here as a country director of International Labour Organization. So can you visualize or some of your experience while you were here, and can you make the difference that, or can you find any difference of the labours and their conditions, the time while you were here and the time when you come back as a country director of ILO?
Sure. I mean, there have been obviously in that time huge changes in the labor market and the structure of the economy. The growth of the industry, particularly in the RMG sector, happened over the past 20, 30 years. It's been astronomical to a world-leading position. When I look around and I've had the opportunity to visit a few workplaces in different sectors of the economy, really I've been seeing all aspects in the spectrum. We've seen really modern facilities, but we've also seen working environments that don't meet expectations, particularly in the informal economy. We see still certain sectors where it's common to see children working or to see wages unpaid or to see excessive working hours and dangerous working conditions. That's something that nobody wants to see. Everybody is working hard to tackle these underlying issues and to find solutions to this. there are no easy solutions to this. Progress is very incremental. It happens through legislation, it happens through institutional capacity building, it happens through working with partners, including workers and employers, to make sure that we are making those gains and gradually raising working conditions across the country to the standard that everybody expects. But these are challenges. But what I would say is that in the time that I've been back in Bangladesh as the ILO country director, I've already seen change in just 8 months that I've been here. One, of course, we talked about the major legislative development around the Bangladesh Labour Act, but other things really give me hope. One is, when we talk about employment injury insurance, for example, a pilot that began just in the RMG sector has now expanded to the leather and footwear sector and will soon expand to the ship recycling sector. So more and more sectors of the economy seeing how this is a model that works both for workers and employers, and providing that critical support to workers who are injured or family members who lose a loved one. So that's a concrete example of change that I've observed. Also, when it comes to overseas employment, we've seen late last year the government adopted a new overseas employment platform, which puts together in one place on a digital platform all of the information of workers, recruitment agencies, training institutions, employers, etc., to bring more transparency to the process. And already over 1 million workers have accessed this, which has reduced some of the costs associated with migration, but really brought more transparency. And that's something that we want to build on. And I think one of the experiences that very much touched me was when I was in Cox's Bazar last year and got the opportunity to talk to women who were training both in the TVET institutions but also in the Kwame madrasas, being trained in non-traditional occupations.
True. And
hearing from them about their future prospects and hearing from other graduates from those institutions who had found jobs already. And that's what gives me hope.
Well, I'll interrupt you over there, because now it's time to go on a break. Ladies and gentlemen, now it's time to go on a break on Talk to SATV, sponsored by Grand Palace Hotel and Resort. Please do come back after the break. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Talk to SATV, sponsored by Grand Palace Hotel and Resort. Before the break, we were discussing about his Cox's Bazar experience, Tunon, because how these, madrasas, students coming out from an informal educational background is joining the mainstream workforce. Well, my question to you, you are now working for labor rights, implementation of labor rights and skill developments. So, in your personal life, how you have been inspired to work in this field?
Well, I mean, I feel very fortunate to be working in this space, being able to make a contribution, and also working with an excellent team here in ILO Bangladesh who are full of committed and very competent professionals. So, I mean, I feel very, very fortunate to have that opportunity. I mean, growing up, I witnessed, I experienced, I saw the injustice of poverty and the challenges that exist for many working people in Bangladesh. And I feel blessed to have the opportunity to come back to Bangladesh and to work on these issues. These are not unique to Bangladesh. I've had the chance to work in several countries around the world. And the issues of lack of decent jobs, work in the informal economy, forced labor and child labor, these are recurring issues worldwide. But I strongly feel that we're in a situation here in Bangladesh where we have a new momentum and very strong partnerships with long-lasting partnerships with the government and with the workers and employers, where we have an opportunity to really move things forward.
So, do you think why young generation, or how young generation should be inspired to be susceptible, or to be to encourage to work for the labor rights? Because you say it's a huge market, because it's a huge field, and for the growth of the country, it's necessary so that young generation should be involved and they should be encouraged. So, what is your message for them?
Well, I don't think they need any lessons from me. I think we saw during the July 2024 revolution that one of the factors that brought young people to the streets was the lack of decent working opportunities. So if anything, I think they're very well aware of the challenges that they're facing in terms of accessing the labor market and making sure that those opportunities are indeed decent. Those are respectful of the conditions in the labor law. So this is something that we do need to capitalize on. We do need to make sure that in our work, when we're looking at new laws and policies or new systems and programs, we are listening to workers and young workers in particular. So we have different channels through which to engage, through trade unions and youth wings of trade unions, but also through training institutions and outreach to other groups, making sure that those end users are feeding information to us on how these programs and these policies can be better shaped. The same is true for the other side, for the employers. We really believe that the private sector has to be in the driving seat when it comes to the creation of jobs. We feel that that skills mismatch that we were talking about before. Paradoxically, despite the shortage of employment opportunities in the country, paradoxically, employers are saying we're not finding workers with the necessary skills, with the skills that we need. So really, it depends on that better collaboration with the private sector. They can play a huge role in terms of helping to inform the curriculum, giving equipment that they use in their factories or in different workplaces, giving it to training institutions so students can practice on the real thing, but also in terms of on-the-job training. Through apprenticeships, through internships, through short-term industry attachments. There are different ways in which we need to engage with the private sector and give them a driving seat in this process.
Your parents were here while you were a kid. You have been here and you came back again. And now after the meetings and after the symposiums, discussions, going through the policies, when you it must have been a wonderful feeling of fulfillment when you go to your home, and then how do you feel about it?
I feel very fortunate to have this opportunity to come back and work in Bangladesh and seeing things through a different lens. Obviously, as a young person or student at that time, it was very different, both in terms of where Bangladesh was, but also my opportunities to see different parts of the country. In the short time that I've been here, I've been fortunate to see different parts of the country, engage with workers and employers in all corners of Bangladesh, and it's something that I look forward to continue to do, because that's what's inspiring, hearing from the workers and employers how they're finding solutions. That's what really motivates me. There's a lot of good work that's happening in the country.
There must have been different stories that you have listened from them. Is there any story that moved you? While you go and share, they share their experience with you. Can you tell a story that you have heard from them or listened from them for our viewers?
Yeah, I think maybe one that touched me and was quite concerning, and one that gives me hope. Talking to workers who are migrating and hearing about the struggles that they face in terms of taking out loans, borrowing money that they don't have, selling assets that they can't afford to lose for the opportunity to migrate. I think this is really heartbreaking, getting into debt in a situation of huge debts that they'll never be able to get out of. I think this is something that we can't tolerate anymore. We have to find a solution around this, making sure that workers are not being exploited at the very first step of the migration cycle. That's something that really drives me to make a big change of that. I've heard from too many workers of this debt bondage situation that they find themselves in. On the positive side, many positives. I think about one, going down to the ship recycling sector in Chittagong.
True.
Where I think there's huge potential for growth as an employer, and a sector that's growing and can employ more people, but also employ people in the right way. And more can be done around the social and environmental compliance in this space. I had the chance to visit one green shipyard where I saw that the investment in decent working conditions and in environmental sustainability was paying off. That they were having more opportunity to do more business as a result of these investments. And that's exactly what the ILO is all about, making sure that these investments pay off, both in terms of good jobs and good business.
So what do you think that the work that's been going on in terms of the government and as well as in terms of the employees as well, do you envisage that the day will come where the workers' right, the workers' condition, living condition, working condition, as well as environmentally safe investment for sustainable growth will be achieved in Bangladesh? Do you envisage that?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I think we have to, as I said, it's an incremental process. We are seeing steps moving in the right direction. We're seeing the laws and the policies improve over time, and we're seeing progress in terms of the institutions that are being built to give effect to these laws and policies. I've had the opportunity also to work with really committed people in the Ministry of Labour and across the government who are really deeply committed to seeing this change through. And what I've seen around the country is that we can make a difference, and we are seeing decent work gains. But obviously the challenges are huge, and the challenges remain.
As we turn into our last part of the interview, so do you have any message for the young generation or the people of this country regarding the labor right or implementation of labor law?
Certainly. I think what is more and more evident to me is that the issue of decent work and the issues of social justice are not just in the interest of one party or the other. These are really mutual gains for workers, employers, and of course the government. And we need to work together. I think working with different aspects, different parts of the government, but also with the trade unions, with the private sector, with the think tanks, the CSOs, youth groups, and others, all moving in this same direction. There's a whole lot that we can do together. And I would say that, I always have one expression to your previous question about whether we can achieve that ultimate goal of decent work in Bangladesh. I'm always reminded of a quote by Martin Luther King. He says, "If you cannot fly, then run. If you cannot run, then walk. If you cannot walk, then crawl."
Wow.
But whatever you do, keep moving forward.
Thank you so much. That's wonderful. Thank you so much, Mr. Tunon. It's an absolute pleasure to have you on my show.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, he has shared his valuable thoughts. He reiterated about the limited resources that this country has, especially in terms of labor inspectors, because the limited resources they have, the constrained time they have, the capacity. He talked about the capacity that we need to build. He envisaged that the day will come where the skill will be developed. ILO is working very closely with the government regarding the skill development and how it could, match with the modern demand of the industry. And he has seen the transition himself, and that somehow that has motivated him, because the insurance that moved from the garment industry to leather industry, and the transition happened in a very short span of time, and how the injustices would be removed if the labor policy turned labor law could be implemented properly. So we hope that day is not far away where labor right will be implemented, where the working condition for women will be achieved, the better working condition, safe investment will come. And he had reiterated about the fact about the overseas workers' work condition, their skill, their sorrows, and he personally how he experienced the working condition, and he wanted our young generations to come up, and he wanted them to be encouraged what ILO is doing, and how they should go forward, and the country should move forward in terms of having a better condition for workers. So we are pretty much thankful that he came here, and we are hopeful that his remaining period he will work more for our laborers, our workers, not only our the workers, especially the workers who are working overseas. So ladies and gentlemen, now it's time to go. Please do come back, because next episode we'll come back with a new show. Until that time, goodbye and Allah Hafiz from Talk to Satv, sponsored by Grand Palace Hotel and Resort.